right. It is time for a drawing tutorial. So, this video will be unscripted, and we will just be doing a follow-up to my last basic shapes video, because in the comments of this video, there were a few questions. A lot of people were enjoying it, but this one wanted more detail. He said he wanted me to make it very, very, very clear. He would love if I did a video showing the torso, pelvis, deltoids, traps, etc. in every angle much more clearly. And so that's exactly what I'm going to do. Show you that in more angles, more clearly. If you haven't already, you might want to watch the last video I did on drawing the basic shapes of the body. But if not, I'll go ahead and do a recap of that now. And because I want this to be kind of pretty and not boring, I'm going to add some interesting colors to the background, because why not? And then go to a new window, and then make this yellow, and then... So I think that color will be a little bit more interesting for the video. So, basic shapes of the body. The head. I like to use basically the Loomis method, but I alter it a bit. So, in the Loomis method, you draw a perfect circle and then slice off the sides of the circle. But instead of doing that, I prefer to just draw the sides already sliced off instead of drawing the circle and then slicing off the sides. Also, another thing about how I draw it is that I make it more blocky. You can see that this is not anything close to a normal circle. I have it kind of like going straight down here, more like straight across on the top, but then more curvy on the front and the back. You know, like just more of a blocky shape, right? And so that's going to be the cranium. Now, halfway down the cranium will be the brow line. So if I go halfway down, that's going to be about there. And that's the brow line. And then at the bottom of this side plane, which should be like right here, and there's the top, will be the nose line. And then at the top of that circle there will be the brow line. Sorry, the hairline. And then I'm going to draw a diagonal line that's a little bit set backward on this plane. And that's going to be where the jaw is coming from, right? And to make this really clear, if I'm going to switch colors real quick, this would be a straight vertical line halfway down. I'm drawing this line here further back and at a slanted angle, because that's how the ear connects, and it also helps with drawing the jaw. Now, you see how from the hairline to the brow line to the nose line, they're all roughly equal distances. You also want the distance from the nose line to the chin to be the same distance. So if you do that, and then you draw the cheekbones connecting there, then you'll have this shape for the chin area. And then to make the jaw, you'll just make an angle connecting this. And so if I switch colors, here's what you should notice about the jaw. It has 3 points on each side. The point that's going to go just below the ear, the point right here where it turns, and then the point right here where it turns again for the jaw, which I like to draw connecting to the cheekbone like that to make a side plane. And then let's keep going. The next thing would be the neck, which is going to connect like this. Now, it's basically just a cylinder, but here's where people get things wrong. They make it too skinny or too thick, and then they also will draw the length of it incorrectly. And so, to get the right thickness, you want to, first of all, keep the front in relatively the same place. No matter how thick your neck is, the front is going to roughly be in the same place most of the time, because there's not really muscle on the front. Now, because this is a 3/4 angle, this will be a little bit of the sternocleidomastoid. And then here on the back, this is where most of the thickness is going to come from. So since this is supposed to be, a muscular man, I drew this line like all the way back there. But if it was going to be a woman or something, I would like really bring this line inward quite a bit. And yeah, so basically you can just draw it like a tube, sort of like that. Now, placing the bottom of the neck is going to be really important, because if it's too long or too short, things look messed up. So how do you find where the bottom of the neck goes? Well, you could be like me, and you could draw it by eyeballing it, or you could do a measurement. And usually what I've found is that from somewhere from the top of the ball of the nose to the bottom of the nose to the bottom of the chin is the right distance. So as we established, this here is the bottom of the nose. And then the top of the ball of the nose might be like around here. And so it should be from like here down to here, from here down to here, and then duplicate that distance and you get right here. And so that's a nice measurement to get the bottom of the neck. Now, the next shape I'm going to draw from different angles to help you out. So the front view. So let's just write that out. Front view. From the front, we're going to have a point. Now, anatomically speaking, it should be more like a thick bar or trapezoid like that. But for simplicity, I just want to use a point. And this point on this figure would be like right here, or maybe more like right here. Not on his jaw, not on his face, but on the back side of his neck. And then it's going to get going out this way and this way for his traps. So on this guy, his traps would look like it's coming out here and here. And then it's going to connect to his collarbones at an angle like this. So you can see it's making sort of a kind of diamond shape. And so on this guy, if we were doing this, we would draw the lines going that way to this trap, and then this way to that trap. And this is his collarbone, by the way. And notice how the bottom of his neck is touching the top of his collarbone. That's important. And then it's going to get wider for the rest of his back muscles, like this there and this there. Now, because I want to be symmetrical, I'm going to go ahead and draw the center line, because if I don't, it's going to be very hard to keep the symmetry. So something like this. And then somewhere along here, and I'll give you a measurement for this in a second, is going to be the belly button. So I'd argue the belly button's right here. It's going to keep getting wider, and then it's going to go inward because of his lats. And then it's going to connect to the belly button at these shallow angles. And so it should look sort of like that. And then that's basically the rib cage area shape. Notice I didn't say rib cage because it is my belief, as I explained in the last video, that drawing the rib cage is stupid because it's irrelevant. You don't see it really. So instead, I just draw the rib cage area with all the muscle packed on top to begin with. Obviously not in detail, as this is a very simple shape, but still with the overall mass and shape of the muscles. And so then the next thing we have to do is draw it from a few different angles. So I'll go ahead and begin by drawing it on this guy. Now what you'll notice is, since this guy is facing our right, what's going to happen is the collarbone point is going to go to our right, but the point for the traps is going to go to our left. And so it's important to make it go that way. So like if I was to continue these trap lines through his head, I'll change the color for clarity. Maybe I'll use green this time. It's going to go like this, and then stop like right here. And then this one is going to go this way, dotted line. So that's me continuing the traps. Notice how it's over here while the collarbone is over here. Notice how the collarbone is further to the right. That's because, what's a good example? Like if I take a cube, let me make it really simple with a cube. Here is a cube. We're looking at it straight on, but also a little bit from the top. So it might look like this, right? Let's say I had a point here and a point here, right? Now if I rotate this cube so that it now looks like this or something, then obviously that point is going to have moved to the right and that one to the left. And so we do the same thing with the traps and the collarbone. And now the next step is to draw the center line. Now, the chest muscles, if they're big enough, will change the center line. But I like to do that later. I like to think of it as if there's no chest muscles yet. I like to treat the chest muscle as like a separate shape. So anyway, here's the center of his neck, and then here is going to be the center of his torso, like so. Now, I want to place the belly button. I'm going to give you that measurement I promised now. It's usually about 1.5 to 2 heads below the chin. And I'm kind of just making up that number, but that's what I found from studying references. So if I go to a new layer really quick, and then we get a different color, and then we go to the top of the head, and then the bottom of the head. Now we're going to take this distance and copy it downward so that we can find where the belly button goes. Now I'm doing this digitally, so if you're drawing traditionally, I'll give you a tip in a moment on how you can do this. So you go 1, 2. So you want the belly button to be somewhere from like here to here in this range, right? So let's go back to the original layer. And I'm going to place the belly button right here. Now let me go ahead and get rid of those blue lines. So here's what you do if you're not drawing digitally. You're going to take the index finger's nail and the thumb's nail, and you're going to place them on the top of the head and on the bottom of the head. So this point here, that's your index finger's nail. And then this point here is going to be your thumb's nail. And then you're going to lock them in position so that when you move your hand, they stay the same distance apart. And then you're going to move it downwards to count heads. So watch me do this. You're going to put it on those 2 points. You're going to move your fingers downward. And then right here is going to be where the second head is. And then go downward again. And right here is where the third head will be. And notice how that's exactly the same spot I got when I used my lasso and transform tool. So you can get high accuracy when you do this. So the head should be about almost 2 heads below the chin. Sorry, the belly button should be almost 2 heads below the chin. And then the next thing would be to draw the sides of the torso. Now, the back is much more round than the front. And so often when I'm drawing people like this, I'll draw the back popping out like a lot more. So it would look something along these lines. This is really sketchy. And then on the front, again, I don't draw the pecs yet, so this is going to look really flat. I'm going to draw it like this. And then we're going to connect the V lines like this there and this there. And then here's the key thing. This point and this point is where it starts getting wider. So like right now, you can see it's going inward, right? Like he's getting skinny. He's like athletic and has a thin waist. At this point and this point is when it stops going inward so much. And so here I'm going to make it get a little bit thicker, and here I'm also going to make it get a little bit thicker. And I'm basically going to create a cylindrical shape for his midsection. Notice how this is not far away from his belly button. There's very little space between the two. I perhaps even added maybe too much. And so that's going to be the midsection. It's really easy to draw the midsection. You're basically just drawing a cylinder-like shape there. Now, I need to draw this from another angle so that you can really understand, because I want to go super in depth for you. And the next angle I'll do, probably we'll do a profile. So a profile view, let me just draw a head really quick for that. So this is the head. This is the neck. So this is the head and neck from a profile view. So, you'd have the eyes like right here and the brow like right there and the nose right there. So with that in mind, this shape, this point is going to be up there near the base of the skull. And then it's going to go outward to curve for the back. And then let's go ahead and place the belly button so that we can get the length of this correctly. So again, I'm going to take my index finger and my thumb's nail, and then I'm going to copy that distance downwards. So the one head will be there, and then the second head will be about there. And so I probably want to place the belly button maybe like right there. Let me go ahead and erase this line and this line. And then we can add the front of the torso without the pecs. And then if we were to draw like the V lines, it's kind of just going to like wrap around to the back. And then, you draw the midsection like this. Notice how on the back it still goes in quite a bit, but on the front it goes straight down. So you want to maintain that. And so if you were curious about how to do the collarbone from this angle, then you would just draw it like this. Same as usual, just going over that direction. Now let's do it from the back view. So let me just erase this. From the back view, we'll have the head. And this will be the cranium, right? Now, if this is the cranium, up here on the cranium, you're going to have the back of the neck, right? So it's going to go down here and here like that. Now, that point is actually not a point, as I mentioned earlier. It's more like this block right here. And what it's going to do is just the usual thing the traps do, which is just go outward in this direction. And so if you're curious, the collarbone should be about here, while the traps end about here and here. Bro's got scoliosis. And then let's just draw a center line real quick. Down the middle. Now, even though we can't see the belly button, I still like to imagine where to place it. So I'm going to imagine where his chin is and use that same method with my index finger and my thumb. So that should be about... So his belly button should be about there. Maybe there. And then, because look, you see how these lines angle that way? That means that when they wrap around his body, you can see that this line is higher up, right? Because it's a 3D shape that's tilting in that direction. And so, on this guy though, the line we need to draw to finish off that shape is going to be higher up, like right there. And so, now we'll draw his back getting a little wider, going down into these points. And now we can draw the midsection. And so that's going to be an easy cylinder again. And this time I might draw this line curving upward, while in the front I have it curving downward. Again, for the same reason, because it's like a cylinder like this, right? And then I think that should be roughly enough detail to get you started. In the future, I'll probably do a video where I show you more complex angles, and I also try to have better proportion, because this here, this is all right proportion, but it's not perfect. So I would not recommend you use any of the drawings that I do in this video as a perfect reference. You can use it as a guide, but if you want a reference, you should find actually good finished art or a photograph, and then apply these principles to it. Because in the past, I've had some of my students draw from references in my videos, And they've done all right because the references were all right because none of this is like bad. But there were like a little bit small proportion issues in their drawings because I have small proportion issues in these because I'm trying to like be quick to keep some of the engagement in your very, very short attention span. So the next shape would be the pelvis. Now I like to divide the pelvis into two shapes, maybe three if we're viewing a back view. So it is basically just going to be a bowl shape, just a cylinder, kind of like the midsection. But the key distinction here is how it gets wider as you go down. So we were going inward like this, and now we're going outward, which is a very important thing. Now, if you're drawing women, you're really going to exaggerate that. But because we're drawing a man right now, it's just going to be a very slight, shallow angle. And another thing you should note is, as I've said earlier, the back is more curvy. And so likewise, you're going to press this angle a little more out, while this one a little bit more straight down. And so on this little drawing here, it's going to look sort of like this for the midsection, and then this for the pelvis. Now, that's not the entire pelvis. Now we need to add the crotch of the pelvis. And so we'll just continue a center line down on these, and then I'll usually just draw some sort of like trapezoid or triangle or round shape, something for the package. And it can look, like this. Sometimes it looks more like this because the leg is overlapping it on that side. So that's something to keep in mind. And on this view, like for example, I think this guy looks a little bit short. I may have made it too squished this way. And so that's something to keep in mind on why these aren't perfect references. But anyway, the next thing would be the bowl shape again, just like this. You'll notice I usually draw on the front view curves like this, but on the back view curves like this. And I think it's because of the angles of the torso. Because if I was to do a sideways view or a profile view of a skeleton, we would have the cranium here, the eye socket, and the jaw, like teeth and stuff. And then you got the spine right here. The rib cage kind of tilts. There's a horrible rib cage. The rib cage tilts kind of in this direction, like that way. And then the pelvis tilts a little bit like this direction, like that way. And so usually for like at least these bottom areas, like around his waist and his pelvis, it's good to have the back side higher up and the front side further down. Because you'll have this counterbalancing throughout the whole body. So this tilts this way, this tilts this way. The head kind of tilts this way. And, then the leg can tilt that way a bit. And then the lower leg will tilt that way a bit. This is a horrible drawing of a skeleton, but, it's to demonstrate how the different parts of the body tilt. Now, for the backside, it's not going to look anything like that. Instead, I'll have more like just shape like this for his butt is what I'll do. And this is just simplified shapes. From a profile view, I might do it more like this. So this will be like the bowl. This will be the front. And this will be the back. I would just have this round that way. And then maybe like connect like that. Because this is gonna be the top of the thigh or the upper leg. And it's gonna go like this. And so the butt kind of just fills in that space between the bowl or cylinder for the pelvis and the thigh. And then, here you could add a little protrusion for the crotch. And then the next shape from there would be the legs. So I think I honestly want to do legs as its own separate video, as they can get quite complicated and hard to draw. Obviously, the whole body is complicated, but I find that people tend to struggle more with the legs. Or at least I hold myself to a higher standard than most people when it comes to drawing the legs. Because I notice like lots of people will learn the anatomy of like the arms, for example. they learn the brachioradialis, the brachialis, tricep, bicep, deltoid, form extensors, extensor carpi longus, or whatever, but then, they'll kind of completely forget about the leg muscles. So don't skip leg day as an artist. So we'll get into that in another video. Now let's get into how to draw the arms of the body. Now, the arms. I believe that the deltoids of the shoulder is part of the arms. So to begin this, we're going to draw on, let's start on this one here actually. To do this, it might actually be easier to start with the chest. So I'll draw the bottom of the chest about there. If you want a measurement that'll help you find where to place the bottom of the chest, because you don't want it to be too long or short, it would be from roughly just above the brow down to the collarbone, copied down. So I'm going to do that same trick where I put my index finger right here and my thumb right here at the top of the collarbone. And I'm going to copy that distance down, and that gets me to about there. And I think that looks roughly proportional with the one I just drew here as well. Again, here's my strategy with learning how to draw proportions. Draw from reference a ton where you pay a lot of attention to it. And then by measuring and paying so much attention to references, now all of that information is just in your mind where you can eyeball where to place things. So you can see this is like a pretty proportional torso shape. Even though like I didn't spend any time in measuring for it, and there's not even a head. I've just drawn it within the few seconds I spent working on this specific one. Whereas you're going to have to spend a lot longer drawing something like this because you just don't know the proportions. And so you need to spend time to get it right. So basically, here's the bottom of the chest. Here's the bottom of the chest on this one. Now we need to draw the edges of the chest. Now, here on the collarbone. See, if the collarbone goes all the way here, the chest is going to end here. It's going to go outward, and then it's going to go inward like this. So it's going to make kind of like a hexagon with a little dip for the collarbone. So if we go outward again and then inward again. Now, the reason why it goes out and then inward is this. Because the way the anatomy works is that you'll have a rib cage shape, and then you'll have the collarbone shapes on top of that. So that you have the sternum right here. And then you'll have the upper arm bone here and here, right? So hopefully you can understand this really simple sketch. The way the chest works is that it's going to, what would be insert, or it's going to originate here on the collarbone, all the way through here, all the way through here on the sternum, and then maybe a little bit on the cartilage of the ribs. And then it's going to insert here on the upper arm. So it basically fans out. So it goes here, and then it fans here, right? So it makes that shape because it connects to the upper arm. So you'll notice that when you raise your arm away from you, your chest flattens, but when you bring your upper arm to the middle, your chest gets rounder because you're contracting the muscle. So that's the shape of the chest. And then when adding the deltoids, you can have a little bump here for the bone of the collarbone, but that's kind of optional. And then you'll add a round shape that comes to a point and then connects like right here. And the deltoid connects here on the collarbone. So you'll have this little gap, like this is the collarbone right here, and this is the deltoid, and this is the chest. And then there's like this, what do they call it? Like an infraclavicular, what do they call it? I'm gonna look it up after this video, but like the intraclavicular hole. I don't know. Anyway, so that's what that will look like, right? Now, this point here, that's where the deltoid attaches to the upper arm bone. So if we go back onto this diagram here, and then we use blue, we can say that the deltoid attaches here, right beside the pec muscle, and it goes around here and around to the top of the shoulder blade, and then it just wraps around and attaches here on the upper arm bone. So again, this is kind of a poor, trashy example drawing, but you should get the idea. Now the next thing would be the upper arm. Now, I just draw what I think looks like an upper arm. And I notice what works for me most of the time is drawing it connecting underneath the chest, because otherwise it gets too skinny and looks weird. So from the chest, I draw a line down there and a line down there. And I keep it real simple, just tubes, right? And the bottom of the bicep should be like right beside the belly button. So the bottom of the bicep should be like here. So this would be roughly the shape of the upper arm. Now, the reason that the upper arm bottom edge, the reason I shaped it like this is because of how the forearm muscles attach to the upper arm. So actually, a common mistake when drawing the upper arm is drawing the biceps edge on this side like a curve like that. That's actually a mistake. The bicep on this side will curve like this. And in this space here, between the bicep and tricep, you'll have what's called the brachialis. And then connecting just underneath that, you'll have the brachioradialis, which will make a shape of a muscle kind of like this right there. And so, because forearm muscles are like kind of attaching up here, I have the biceps dip all the way down like this. And then I have it go up like this for the forearm muscles. So like if this was from more of a profile view, because we're looking at this straight on, I would have the deltoids going like this. And then I would have the biceps going down like this, maybe like underneath the chest. And then it would go like this sort of. Like it's going to be more like a point here, whereas here I made it more of like a blocky large shape because it has more space. So this would be sort of like the basic shape of the upper arm. And then from there, I would just draw the forearm, and then the forearm would go, to having the wrist lining up with the bottom of the pelvis. And I also make sure to make it kind of like a meaty part up here, and then a blocky, bony part down there. And that usually works for me best. And so you do the same thing on the other side. But if I was to show you from a 3/4 angle like this, you'd have the chest looking, something like this, popping out like that. And then you would have the deltoids going this way, like that. And then you got the upper arm going like this. And then you got the forearm going down like this. And then from the other side, you just have a little bulge here. It's going to be largely overlapped by the side of the body, so I don't put as much effort into it. And then, yeah, that's basically it. So let's draw it from the back view. So the interesting thing is how you're going to have the traps making a weird shape like this from the back view. But that's not really important for this video. It's more like anatomy details. But what you'll find is that this line for the bottom of the traps is actually also the line for the top of the scapula. And the top of the scapula, as I described here with this curve, is what the deltoids attach to. And so, let me just erase this really quick. You'll have the deltoids attaching like this on this side. Same thing over here. Again, this is not a good drawing that I'm doing. You're better off looking at some references and using this as a guide, because I'm really not trying to make good drawings. I'm trying to give you a guide on how the muscles work and the basic shapes you can use when constructing the body. And then, you'd have the upper arm like this, and then the forearm like this, and then the fist here like this. So now I want to show you exactly how this works in a really easy to understand way by just putting it on top of an existing person or drawing. So here is one of my drawings, and it's of Man Ray. And I'm going to just show you how I would draw the basic shapes on top of this highly detailed drawing so that you can get the idea. So, first thing is the traps. Now, I drew this curve here, but that curve is like a detail. Remember, we're trying to draw the basic shapes. So instead, I would go to this point up here and go to this point here and just connect them with a line. And then I would do the same thing down here for that side. And I don't know, maybe I should move this line a little bit further out. Let me do that. Probably more like right here. And so this would go out this way, and this would go out this way. And then we would have the collarbones going this way and this way. And then again, we're going to have the front side be much more flat, and then we're going to add the chest on top later. And so we're going to round out this back. And look, this point is where it starts getting thicker again, right? And so likewise, it's going to be the same place over here. So we can draw these V lines to the belly button, which is right here. Then we can draw the center line, which is obscured by the shape of the chest. See how it bulges out there? And then we go down this way with it. Next thing would be the midsection. So all you got to do is draw a cylindrical shape through here. Then we're going to draw a bowl shape. Notice how it pops out in the back again through here. Then you can draw the bottom of this pelvis like that. Then you'll have the deltoids. Oh, I should point this out. This is that intraclavicular stuff there. See how the deltoids, the pecs, and the collarbone are all overlapping each other. But anyway, you have the chest muscle being overlapped by the deltoid there like that. So the chest is making a shape like this. And then you have the deltoid going on top like this. Then the bicep, you can see, is going underneath the chest, as I said. And then we can have it going up like this for these forearm muscles. See that there, how it connects like a puzzle piece. Then you got the meaty part of the forearm followed by the bony part of the forearm there like that. Then you can have a kind of blocky shape for the palm that is round at where the middle finger would be, like it points out the most. Then you add a little bump for the thumb. And now if I remove the drawing layer, you can see how this looks similar to the shape I was describing earlier. So let me just go ahead and add this chest shape over here so that looks normal. And then let me add this deltoid shape, this bicep shape, this forearm shape, and then this fist shape. Let me just go ahead and add the legs real quick. So something like that. And now, if I remove this background, you can see that the basic shapes look sort of like that, which if we rewind and look at what I was drawing earlier, it's very, very similar, right? The only thing that I note that's different from what I was showing you earlier to here is how really like this back is going inward this direction like that. And also how you have a little bit of a pop out for the oblique. And maybe I would adjust the proportions of the different shapes of the pelvis. So you can see here how I made the crotch area a bit longer and this bowl area a bit shorter. Just changing those lines to yellow so you can see them a bit better. And another thing I'd like to point out is how on people with quite large traps, like the person I was drawing there, how this point can be quite high and at a steep angle. And other than that, I don't really have much to say to you. If you have any questions, make sure to leave it in the comments and I'll try to address it in a future video. And also let me know which video you want to see next. And that's not me just being a YouTuber trying to, get you to comment or whatever, because I actually need to know what videos you want to see so I can make it, because I will read the comments. And if you say you want a tutorial on drawing the pecs, I will make a tutorial on drawing the pecs. Also in the description, I have a link to my drawing community where we have challenges and I can give you critiques directly. And there's also a premium option for it where I can give you personalized coaching, where I can speak with you and all that kind of thing. So just join the school. It's free, it's easy to use, right? And tell me which video you want to see next.